Welcome to New Hampshire's Business. I'm Fred Coker. At one time or another, many of us have had a time when we question whether our privacy was at risk. Some of us have had it compromised. And there's a bipartisan bill now in the New Hampshire Senate that would establish privacy rights for consumers in New Hampshire and also privacy requirements for businesses and other organizations. Here's the bill, Senate Bill 255. And consumer expectation of privacy. The consumer has the right to confirm whether or not a business is processing personal data. It can correct inaccuracies, delete personal data, obtain a copy, or opt out. And then businesses, business organization or data collection and maintenance limits the collection of that data to what is adequate, relevant, and reasonably necessary in relation to purposes for which the data is processed as disclosed to the consumer, and shall establish, implement, and maintain reasonable administrative, technical, and physical data security practices to protect confidentiality, integrity, and accessibility of personal data. That's a lot of language, but we're going to explain it. With me to walk through this is the chair of the Cybersecurity Practice Group at McLean Middleton, Cameron Schilling. Nice to have you here.
Good morning, Fred. Thank you.
A law firm that's in Manchester, Concord, Newington, Woburn, and Boston. You're all over the place. Most of us are reminded of privacy when we go to the doctor's office or the hospital. We sign that HIPAA form. That's privacy. Now, and just I'm saying that just to give people a sense of what we're talking about here. But this particular bill in New Hampshire has a much wider scope.
Exactly, Fred. What this bill would do is it would give us privacy rights similar to HIPAA, but with respect to a much broader swath of information. This bill would cover any information about an individual that's identifiable to them, and give us rights like you quoted, the right to opt out, to limit the use of information, and to know how businesses are using personal information about us.
Other states have this kind of law?
Yes, this bill follows similar broad privacy bills in 4 other states, most notably recently in Connecticut, but also it's closely tracking laws that have been enacted in foreign jurisdictions, principally Europe and Canada, which have lapsed over the border into New Hampshire in many meaningful ways.
So would this make it easier or more difficult for a New Hampshire business to transact business in other jurisdictions that may or may not have a similar law?
Yeah, so it would make it easier in a couple of different ways. First, laws in places like Europe and Canada require that if a business is going to transfer personal information from there to here or from here to there, that we in New Hampshire have laws that protect information in a similar way, and this bill would accomplish that. Also, this bill has the effect of kind of leveling the playing field here in New Hampshire. A lot of New Hampshire businesses that have operations in other places or data about individuals from other places, they're already complying with these laws. So what this bill would do is level the playing field and impose the same set of rules on all New Hampshire businesses.
And I suppose it relates to cybersecurity.
Absolutely. A piece of this bill says to New Hampshire businesses, when we collect personal information about individuals, we need to make sure that we have the right controls in place to prevent it from being lost or stolen, which is equally as important to the privacy rights.
This bill is extensive. I mean, I was amazed how many pages it is. Does it have a chance of passage in the state Senate?
Fred, I think it has a chance, and more than that, I hope it passes. One of the reasons why this bill is so extensive is because it's good. It's been vetted by consumer groups and industry groups. It's modeled on other bills that have passed in state legislatures, principally in Connecticut. And so it contains the type of regulations that not just individuals need, but businesses need to know what we need to do to comply with the law.
Final question, it's just so general. The U.S. Constitution does not mention privacy, as you know. Right. But the Supreme Court has mentioned it several times, and it's found its way into a few of our amendments to the Constitution. So we have privacy established as a right nationally, but here we're dealing with it at the state level. Just briefly, we have to do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the great thing about constitutional amendments, both at the federal level as well as in our state constitution, is that they provide backstops. But In this instance, the backstop is quite far away. And what this legislation would do is fill in a lot of the holes and create a lot of the details that businesses need to know what to do to comply with privacy
Cameron
rights.
Schilling, who is the head of the cybersecurity group at McLean Middleton Law Firm. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
And if you missed part of this briefing, you can go to WMUR.com, where it will be posted all this week.